This week's episode of Let's Talk About Mental Health is Let's Talk About the Holidays. How to get through the holiday season with your mental health intact. So let's get talking. This is Let's Talk About Mental Health, a weekly podcast about mental health and well-being hosted by Jeremy Godwin. Let's talk about mental health, because the more we talk about it, the easier it gets. Ho ho ho, season's greetings and a very warm welcome to episode 11 of Let's Talk About Mental Health. Sorry, I couldn't resist myself. I almost inserted sleigh bells, but I thought I'd better stop. This is the podcast that's all about practical advice to improve and maintain your mental health and well-being. I'm Jeremy Godwin, and I'm very glad that you could join me for this episode, which, as always, you can either listen to as a podcast or read on letstalkaboutmentalhealth.com.au. This week, we're going to be talking about the holidays. We're in that time of year where things can become very challenging for some people, and there are lots of potential triggers around, like food and drink and family and all that kind of stuff. So today, we'll talk through how to look after your mental health and well-being and make the most of this time. So let's get talking. As the song says, it's the most wonderful time of the year. Well, except for when it's not. Many of you in North America have recently had Thanksgiving, and many of us are gearing up for Christmas as well as the New Year shortly after. With so much going on, it can become overwhelming. Regardless of whether or not you actually celebrate Christmas, it's impossible to avoid. You only have to duck to the supermarket to pick up your groceries, and you'll be bombarded with Christmas carols and decorations, along with more Christmas-related merchandise than you can shake a candy cane at. Actually, most of that stuff's been out since at least August, so we've been dealing with it for a while. The holiday season can be joyful or it can be stressful, and all too often, it can be a combination of both. We tend to refer to this time of year as the holidays because not only does that title capture the big events like Christmas and New Year's and Thanksgiving in North America, but it also reflects the fact that many of us tend to take time off over this time of year. The thing is though, many people still have to work to keep all those shops and services going that we've come to rely on so much. And then, on top of that, regardless of whether or not you have time off, it's a difficult time of year for many people for a variety of reasons. For example, difficult family relationships, the loss of a loved one, being disconnected from family or friends or not able to spend time with loved ones, ongoing relationship issues like separation or divorce, single parents winning or losing the lottery on who gets the kids, or one parent not showing up for Christmas and causing a child hurt and anger. It could be not having the money to do the things that you want to do. There are so many different hurdles at this time of year that it can become overwhelming and exhausting for many of us. If you're not having a great time at this supposedly joyful time of the year, you're not alone. But getting through the holidays doesn't mean that you need to limp your way to the finish line on New Year's Eve. It is entirely possible to get through the next couple of weeks in one piece with your mental health and well-being firmly intact. It takes a little bit of work and effort, and that's what we're going to talk about today. First though, why do some of us struggle at this time of year? Well, there are various reasons, like I said before, but one of the main things that all of those examples have in common is that they're all closely linked to the weight of expectation that seems to go hand in hand with the holidays. Whether or not you celebrate Christmas, it is impossible to avoid it unless you go and live in a cave for a month or two. And even then, I swear you'll be able to hear Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You somewhere in the distance. There is a joy to the idea of Christmas, but the reality often leaves a lot to be desired. I know that personally I struggle at this time of year, just as I do around specific anniversaries and my birthday. We choose to have a small Christmas day, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Mostly it's because the majority of our family lives too far away, and also because I have a not fantastic relationship with my mother. The holidays are very triggering for me, and frankly, now that I'm a bit older, I just prefer to keep it as a low-key day and take it easy. And you know what? That's okay, because we each have the right to make the choices that are right for us. And it's just a day. I didn't get through years and years of severe anxiety and depression by not learning a thing or two about setting boundaries that are in my best interests. And I know that if I push myself too hard at this time of year, I get overly emotional, which can lead me into a downward spiral of feeling a bit depressed for a few weeks. Everybody's experience and feelings is completely unique, and with that in mind, in today's episode, I'm going to go through some practical advice for how to work through different challenges that you might be grappling with over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to give some general advice for you to think about different ways of approaching the holidays, and then I'll talk about a few specific things, namely dealing with your stress levels, what to do if you're entertaining to maintain your mental health and well-being, and what to do if you or someone you know is dealing with grief at this time of year. Alright, so let's start with some general advice for everyone. First, set realistic expectations. Perfection isn't realistic, and you don't have to be Martha Stewart or Nigella. If you want to be, great, but you don't have to be. I used to stress myself out over how perfect I wanted my Christmas wrapping to be every year, until finally I realised enough was enough. Now it's gift bags all the way, and guess what? Nobody cared. It's okay to just be okay with things like gifts instead of perfect. Set realistic expectations. And speaking of gifts, do you really need to buy gifts for everyone? When I went through the beginning of my health issues back in 2011 and 2012, it got to a point where I was in such a terrible financial position that I could barely pay my bills, let alone pay for Christmas presents. So for Christmas 2012, I had an honest conversation with people about why I wouldn't be doing presents that year. And do you know what? Nearly every single one of them was relieved. Buying presents for people creates pressure, both on you and on them. It takes time and it all adds up. So consider reducing your circle of gift giving as much as possible. My partner and I don't buy one another gifts. I know that might sound funny, but what we usually do is we often end up buying something for the house that we both want, or we'll buy a series on Apple TV that we can watch together. Speaking of purchases, I don't know who needs to hear this, but Christmas doesn't have to be just about the commercial side of things if you don't want it to be. You have a choice. It's up to you whether or not to engage. You can achieve the gift of giving with something simple, or if you're feeling really artsy, then perhaps you can make something. Either way, it's the thought that counts. At the very least, you can always limit the number of gifts to one per person. Because the unfortunate thing about Christmas is that it often goes hand in hand with debt. Here in Australia, there was a recent study released that identified our country as having the second highest level of household debt in the world after Switzerland, and that the average household debt is close to 200% of income. I'll include a link to all of that research in the transcript on the website. Now, a lot of that is because housing prices here have gone insane over the past 20 years, but we as a country have a real issue with credit cards as well, with over $45 billion in debt, which is massive for a country of just under 25 million people. Getting yourself into debt for Christmas is insanity, and it will cause you more stress later. So, regardless of what country you're in, it might sound simplistic, but the cold hard fact is, if you want to protect your mental health and well-being, then it's important not to put yourself in a position where you're going to struggle later just because of one day of the year. Make smart choices. If you can't afford Gucci loafers for everyone that you love, then don't buy Gucci loafers for everyone that you love. It's that simple. Now, if you can afford them, then that's your choice, but take a moment to think seriously about why overpriced footwear is even necessary and what it says about our culture. And apply that thought to Christmas presents in general. I don't want to lecture anyone or anything, probably will come across that way and I apologize. But the money that you spend on Christmas presents can be better served doing something kind for your community. Don't buy stuff just for the sake of stuff or because it's got a fancy logo on it. I used to spend so much money on clothing and sunglasses and everything, and I wear glasses every day in order to be able to see, and I would not wear glasses unless they were Prada or another big label. Then when I went through my financial problems, I discovered that it really made no difference whether or not I purchased generic or label. The world did not stop turning. Prioritize your well-being over all other factors, and if buying things is going to give you any kind of financial distress, make the decision not to engage or minimize your spend. With that in mind, if you don't want to decorate, don't decorate. The world could do with less stuff being purchased just to decorate our homes for a few weeks and then either put away for the rest of the year or just thrown out. Anything that you can do to reduce the amount of rubbish we throw away every year is a good thing. The resources on this planet are finite and we can't just keep on consuming. Don't let Christmas become an excuse for waste. Now, that might sound a bit preachy. It's a very personal opinion. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion when it comes to Christmas decorations. I just think be realistic and also don't go over the top. Here's a few more general tips before I get into some of the specifics. In general, stick to your regular routine as much as possible. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Having a set bedtime and a set time to get up each day creates good mental health because it serves to stabilize your mind and body. Get plenty of rest. I know there's a lot going on at this time of year with Christmas parties and catching up with friends and family and whatnot, but rest is vital. Try not to overindulge. You don't need to deny yourself, but all things in moderation. And if you do overindulge, forgive yourself and get back on track as quickly as possible to avoid it spiraling. Remember that it's okay to say no to things. You have the choice to do as much or as little as you would like. Another thing is, be alone if you want to be alone. And if you don't want to be alone, then don't be alone. Again, it's your choice. If you don't have anyone to spend Christmas Day with and you don't want to be alone, go and help out a charity. I know that's a piece of advice that comes up a lot, but with good reason, because there are always people who have it worse than you, and you can make a positive difference with a gift of your time. In general, at this time of year, do what makes you happy. My philosophy is always, if it doesn't harm anybody, go for your life. And if there are things that make you feel happy, do them. Every year, my partner and I like to watch The Year Without a Santa Claus and Elf on Christmas Eve, and so we do. And that makes me happy. So do more of what makes you happy. Be in the present. Take time for yourself, take plenty of time for self-care, and take a break if you need it. Also, I talk a lot about practicing gratitude, and this is a really good time of the year to practice gratitude, especially if you find yourself in the middle of a not great situation with family or whatnot. Be grateful for the things that you do have and notice more of those. Remember also that it's okay to ask for help. And before I get into more specifics, be considerate because not everyone celebrates Christmas, and that is completely their choice, and we should respect one another's choices. If it doesn't harm anyone, then people's choices are their choices. One of the ones I mentioned a bit earlier was stress, and let's talk about stress at this time of year for a moment. Monitor your stress levels carefully, especially if you're prone to anxiety or other mental health conditions. And if you need to take a break, then take a break. Acknowledge and accept your emotions. It's okay to feel the way that you feel. And remember that emotions are manifestations of needs that are either met or unmet. So, if you're struggling, then take some time to think through what's going on underneath the surface and consider what is within your control to change. And like I said before, take plenty of time out for self-care. If that means that you need to go soak in a bubble bath for an hour or close your eyes and meditate, then you do you. You're no good to anybody if you're running on empty. If you're entertaining, make it easy on yourself. I used to do this ridiculously elaborate menu that would stress me out all day on Christmas. I'd start cooking at 5 a.m. and I'd inevitably end up with days and days of leftovers because I overcatered. Now I do a boneless turkey breast thing that just goes straight in the oven and I serve it up with a couple of salads. Now, I'm mindful that I'm fortunate that being in Australia means lighter foods are better at this time of year anyway, because it's usually hotter than the 7th layer of hell on Christmas Day. But you can pretty much buy anything ready to go these days. Do things to make your life as easy as possible. Pre-order your groceries and have them delivered. Choose simple meals with the minimum of fuss or cooking. Or even just have pre-made meals ready or do a potluck if you've got people coming over. And if any family members judge you, that's their issue, not yours. Don't buy into other people's issues. Which leads me nicely into, if you're spending time with family, many of us find that we become very different versions of ourselves around our family. And we might even revert to the same roles and relationships that we've had since childhood, which could mean that you start fighting with your siblings or feeling judged by your parents, etc., etc. And do you know what? You can choose whether or not to engage. I know that sounds really simplistic, but it's the truth. Only you can control what you do with other people's words. If you choose to take negative stuff on board and get all hurt and defensive and upset, then that's on you. The only choices you ever have in any situation are to accept it as it is, to change the way that you perceive it and react to it, or remove yourself from the situation. Yelling and screaming won't change things. Crying won't change things. Sitting there all hurt and upset is not going to change things. Hurling the mashed potatoes at your sister's head won't change things. All that you can control are your own thoughts, feelings, and actions. For things to change, you must change. Now, I know it's easier said than done when grandma is sitting there reading your store-bought mashed potatoes to filth, or your drunk uncle is prying into your personal life, or your cousin is sitting there spouting off about their extreme political views. But ask yourself this, does it really matter? Is it really worth getting into a state over? And will it really matter in 5 years' time? Because it doesn't really matter. It's not worth getting into a state over, and it won't matter in 5 years. Other people's opinions are just words, and you can choose to do what you want with them. Alright, this next bit will be a little tough for some people, because I'm going to talk about grief. Grief is difficult enough at any time of the year, but it especially seems to be heightened around big events like birthdays, anniversaries, and the holidays. If someone that you love has passed, or is no longer in your life, for example due to a relationship breaking down, then you need to think about how to approach this time of year. So what can you do? Well, feelings can't just be switched off, and it's completely natural to expect that you'd be sad about missing loved ones, whether that be because they've passed or they are no longer in your life. Be gentle with yourself, allow yourself to feel your feelings, and do what feels right to you. If you want to celebrate, celebrate. If you want to take this year off, then take it off. If you want to do something different, do something different. You can always choose to mix things up if it's too painful to follow tradition, or you can start making new traditions. And remember, if you're feeling up to it, take the time to celebrate the person. But if you're not ready, you're not ready. These things take time. Everybody processes grief at their own pace. For those of you who have children and they're dealing with grief, that could be because a family member has passed, it could be due to a relationship breakdown. This is a really tough time of year for them as well, and I know that you know that. But give them time, give them space, and encourage them to talk to you about what they're feeling and help them to process through, because grief is very confusing as a child. And I know myself from when my parents split up when I was 7, it's a very confusing time when you go through your first major holiday and suddenly there's a parent not there. Or there's these weird arrangements where, you have to be picked up at 11 a.m. so that you can go and spend 3 hours with your father and open presents with these weird people that you don't really know and then go back home. Very odd. Further to that, if a friend or a family member is grieving, let them know that you're there for them and be prepared to give them space. It is a really fine line between being supportive and being too supportive. And since everyone is different, you'll need to follow your instincts and feel your way through the situation, or just ask outright what you can do. Often, the most thoughtful gestures are the simple ones that can take a little pressure off. Drop around a casserole, and without making a big deal of it, remember, give them space. Or you might offer to pick their groceries up for them, or invite them out for a coffee. Grief is a process, and this time of year can make it harder to deal with. So remember that whether it's you grieving or someone that you know, the only way to get through it is to take it one day at a time. So in short, when we talk about the holidays, we should always remember that they are just a time of year that some cultures choose to celebrate, including ours in the West. There are wonderful aspects, giving, joy, family, but there are negative aspects too. Commercialism, heightened emotions, family. And all we can do is take it easy on ourselves. There is no such thing as the perfect holiday, nor should there be. Life is messy, and it doesn't just take a day off so that we can sit around a tree and talk about an obese individual who spends all night breaking into houses. I'm looking at you, Santa Claus. Do as much or as little as your heart demands, and remember to give yourself the gift of kindness, which is worth more than any material item that you could ever receive. As always, take things one day at a time. After all, the holidays only happen for a very short period, so remember that you can get through it and you will get through it. So, when it comes to the holidays and mental health and well-being, here are a few tips that I'd like to leave you with as I head towards the end of this week's episode. Number 1. The holidays are sold to us as a time of joy, but for many of us, they can be a nightmare. However, they don't have to be. Number 2. If you find the holidays stressful, know that you can choose to do as much or as little as you want, and it's your right to choose. Number 3, don't get in over your head with spending, and don't get caught up in family drama. Stay calm and put your mental health first. So as always, I'm going to close out with a quote for you to reflect on. I like this quote by the Dalai Lama, which I think ties very well into this week's topic, and it is, "Be kind whenever possible. It is always possible." Let me repeat that. Be kind whenever possible. It is always possible. Alright, to summarize. The holidays can be a challenging time of year, but it's also a great opportunity to connect with those you love and to reflect on the year that has been. Choose to prioritize your mental health and well-being, and know that it's okay to do things your way if that's what you want to do. And that brings me to the end of this week's episode. Thank you very much for joining me, and I hope that you got some useful advice. Next week will be the final episode for 2019, and I'll be talking about reflection. Since it's nearly the end of the year and also the end of the decade, and since I talk about the art of reflection at least 47 times every episode, I'm going to be talking about how you can take time to reflect on your journey over the past year and the past decade so that you can identify the lessons it has to teach you as you move into a new year. In the meantime, stay in touch on social media. I post extra content throughout the week online, and you can find Let's Talk About Mental Health on Instagram, Pinterest, and Facebook at LTAMH Official. That's LTAMH Official. Also, you can go to the website to find extra content, listen to past episodes, and read the written version of every episode, along with the Mental Health Talk newsletter that I send out every Friday, which is full of hints and tips for making the most of your mental health and well-being. Head over to letstalkaboutmentalhealth.com.au. That's letstalkaboutmentalhealth.com.au. If you enjoy this episode, please take a moment to leave a review on your preferred podcast platform, because reviews help other people to find the show. And if you're feeling really generous, give Let's Talk About Mental Health a follow on Instagram and tell your friends about it. Thanks. Until next time, look after yourself and make a conscious choice to put positivity and kindness out into the world, because what you put out comes back to you. Thanks again, and talk to you in the next episode on Monday the 23rd of December.